my name's Maria and I'm here to help you tune your violin. Today we're going to talk about tuning with the pegs for beginners. As a beginner, it's not very common to use the pegs on your own, and they can be rather tricky. So if you're watching this video, there's a chance that a few things have happened. Maybe your string has become so loose that it's wiggly and doesn't even seem to make a sound. Or you need to use your fine tuners, but your fine tuner is all the way in and you can't tighten it anymore. I do advise having someone help you with the pegs if you're first starting out. You can get help from a music store or wherever you got your instrument, from a music teacher, or from a string musician you might know. But you might find yourself in a situation where you need to know how to do this on your own, especially if you're taking online lessons and don't have an in-person teacher. Eventually, you will have to learn how to use the pegs on your own, so I'm going to do my best to walk you through it today. Before we start, here are a few basic ideas to keep in mind. 1. Remember that the fine tuners change the pitch, the highness or lowness of the string by a very small amount, but the pegs can change the pitch by a much larger amount. Because of this, when we're tuning with the pegs, I want you to keep in mind that we're going to move them a tiny amount. Think millimeters at a time. Remember to move slowly and adjust only a small amount. Number 2, it's always better to tune up into the note. In other words, it's better to start from a lower pitch or a looser string and then tighten the string to get it in tune. This is because A, we don't want to accidentally tighten the string too much. This is what causes it to break. And B, it's easier for most people to slide up into the pitch rather than to slide down into it. Number 3, violin and viola and cello pegs are not like guitar pegs. If you've tuned guitars or similar instruments, like this baritone ukulele, the violin will not respond the same way. Usually with these instruments, you can just turn the pegs one direction or the other and they'll stay in place. However, the pegs on the violin are tapered. They're smaller on this side than on this side. That means you have to push them in as you turn them, kind of like if you're screwing something into a wall with a screwdriver. Don't just turn them, but push and turn. Sometimes this takes a bit more muscle control and strength. This is why I sometimes recommend that parents or other adults help out if the violinist is a young student. Number 4, as you're looking at your violin or in playing position, remember that turning the pegs away from you will tighten them and turning them towards you will loosen them. When in doubt, try looking at where the string is wound around the peg and think about which direction will tighten or loosen the string. Number 5, as I've said in my other tuning videos, remember that tightening a string raises the pitch or makes it sharper, and loosening a string lowers the pitch and makes it flatter. Now, let's try tuning our A string. I'm going to start with one of the situations I mentioned. My fine tuner is all the way in, but my A string is still too low. First, I'm going to loosen my fine tuner. Lefty-loosey, turn it counterclockwise. This will give me some room to adjust it once I've tuned with the peg. Let's hear what my A string should sound like with my electronic tuner. Now, my A string sounds pretty low. I still want to hum that note so I know what it should sound like. I'm going to turn and push in as I move the peg away from me to tighten the string. We're pretty close. So now I can adjust with my fine tuner. Once we get the note close enough with the pegs, we can use the fine tuners. Remember, you want to make sure that you get close to the note but don't go too high. This will make sure that we don't break any of the strings or make them too tight. That being said, I sometimes have students who are worried that if they break a string, it will snap or hurt them in some way. And I have to say that that's never happened to me. I've broken several strings and they never snap up or go in your face or anything like that. So you don't have to worry about getting hurt by a string if it breaks. However, the cost of replacing strings definitely adds up. And of course, we don't want to have to break a string if we can avoid it. The important thing to remember here is to always play when you're moving the peg. Keep plucking with one hand as you're turning the peg. Just like when we use the fine tuners, this will help you make sure that you haven't over-adjusted and gone too far. Again, it's also easier to tune from a lower note to a higher note. We can kind of slide into the higher note. Another thing, make sure the peg stays in place once you take your hand off it. If the peg slips, it means you probably weren't pushing it in at the same time you were turning it. This can feel very frustrating when you're first starting. But again, like everything else with the violin, it will become easier and it will improve with time and practice. Just remember not to rush through it. Take your time and go slowly and in small steps. So next, I'm going to tune my D string. As you can see, it's very floppy and it's not really making a sound. I have my A string in tune now. And I'm going to think, so, fa, mi, re, do. That's what my D string should sound like. You can also get the note D from a piano or a pitch pipe or another pitch source. I'm going to pluck and play. All right, with that one, I had to give it a little extra push to make sure it stays in place. Again, it's a little flat, but I can adjust that with the fine tuners. Remember, use your electronic tuner to help you. When you're adjusting with the pegs, make sure you're looking at the electronic tuner. It will tell you when you've reached the note that you want, especially if you're moving slowly. Now, sometimes when we tune, especially when we use the pegs, the tightening and loosening of one string can have an effect on the other strings. It's always good to go back and check that the other strings are still in tune after adjusting one of them. So my G string is out of tune here. Again, I'm plucking while I'm playing and going very slowly, pushing in while I'm turning the peg. Any additional adjustments I can make with the fine tuners. Okay, that wasn't too bad. I do have to tell you though, tuning with the pegs is difficult if you're not used to it, and it takes practice. It's very different than tuning a guitar or ukulele if you've done that before. If you're really struggling with the pegs or are nervous about breaking a string, I recommend trying to find a professional to help you. It takes someone with experience only a few minutes to tune a violin, and don't worry, you will be able to tune that quickly eventually, even though it may feel like it takes a super long time now. However, do keep in mind that tuning your instrument on your own is an important skill that will help you become more independent as a musician, and you'll be able to develop that skill by practicing more today. Let's review a few things. First of all, here's how I prefer to tune with the pegs when I'm first showing my students how to use them. I have my violin facing me, I'm looking at the strings, and I'm able to rest my hands on the shoulders of the violin. I take my left hand, and that's what I use to pluck the strings while I'm playing. I'm a righty, so I'm more comfortable using my right hand to tune and turn the pegs. All right, and with that, that does it for this lesson on tuning with the pegs. If you have any suggestions or tips that I missed, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to continue with a few more tuning videos, but let me know if there's anything else you'd like help with or would like to see. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. And until next time, happy practicing!